We all like shows, we all like getting paid, we all like performing and getting our time on stage, but do you really know what to expect once you get hired up until the day of the show, and how to maybe prevent some miscommunications or some mistakes or errors on either your side or the producer's side? Today we're going to be talking about some of those little insights of what should you expect as a performer at the time of hire. I am a huge fan of communication. I'm not always the best at it. It is something that I have to practice constantly, as a lot of people do. But I think it's really important, and especially as a performer, when you have all of these different details about a show in somebody else's hand, it is really important that you get as many details as you can finalized and confirmed at the very beginning of being hired for a show or a gig, just so that you have less to worry about moving forward and you know what to expect. Anybody who knows me, anybody who follows me on social media, they know how I am a huge advocate for getting paid, and getting paid well. That goes beyond burlesque, and that goes beyond performing. That goes for staff and stage kittens, MCs, and anybody. Even if you're a producer, you should be getting paid. Granted, there are some specifics, like producers should be the last people to get paid, and if anybody is missing out on money due to ticket sales, the producer is usually that person. However, I do think everyone should get paid. I think all performers should have a flat rate, which is a starting rate before tips. Some shows will do tips, and some shows will do a split of the door or a split of liquor sales. That works for some people. Personally, I am an advocate for making sure you're guaranteed a pay rate, because there's a lot of times when you might see performers who get paid $20 for a show or $5 for a show, or nothing at all because of that. It's really, really important that you know at the very beginning when you're hired how much you're getting paid. And so sometimes, even if you fill out application forms or when there's a casting call, producers will say that right away, and sometimes they'll say it after hire. Even if it says it in writing in, say, a casting call, I will double check with emails. I keep everything in writing. If a producer reaches out to me, whether privately to invite me to a show, or if I applied and they say that I've accepted, I will always double check that and say, thank you so much for having me, and just to confirm, this is the pay that's agreed upon plus tips, or it's this rate not including tips, or whatever the confirmation is, and for how many numbers you want. In addition to that is, when do you get paid? As we can probably assume, nothing is worse than expecting payment on the night of a show or the week after a show, and then going weeks or sometimes months without getting paid, or sometimes people don't get paid at all. And there can be a lot of different reasons for this. Sometimes venues are responsible for the payments, and venues take a long time to process if they're really busy. Sometimes you have to wait for a third party if you are using something like Eventbrite or brown paper tickets. And if something like that happens, usually you can still have a guesstimate of when to expect payment. So I always double check as well when to expect payment if I haven't worked with a producer before. There's certain producers who I might work with frequently. I know their process. I don't need to check with them every single time I work with them. If there's ever a situation where that producer may have experienced in the past, like maybe it will be 3 weeks, but I will pay you by this date. And if you have that in writing, then it's really easy for you to go back to that later, especially if you're somebody who performs more than once a month and has multiple gigs that you're doing all the time. Even if you just have it in an email or Facebook message or however you're getting hired, that's really important to keep. And then some of the specifics, which may seem pretty self-explanatory. What are the show details? What is the date? What is the call times? What venue is the show at? And what are the accessibility restrictions or accommodations that the venue has? So does the venue have stairs to get onto the stage? Are there going to be strobes and fogs in the show? As a performer, if you don't have any mobility issues or sensory issues, that is totally okay. You can disregard. I usually do this anyways, just so that I can be aware, and also as a producer, I'll tell all of my performers as well the information that they need to know, just in case there's information that is really relevant to them, or even people they might invite to the show. And if I know certain things, like if I know there's going to be fog or strobe lights, then even if it's not in the regular show promotion, I can at least start to promote on my social media platforms the show I'm in, and just say, as a disclaimer, there will be strobe lights or there will be smoke. If I do have an accessibility need, and if I can't take stairs very easily, then I'll know, okay, there's 2 steps up to the stage, or the stage is on the ground floor. And then I can really plan myself around the show and the event based on the venue. As well, what is expected of me as a performer? I talk all the time about the producer and what to expect of a producer. We also have responsibilities as performers. Some things are going to be very common and the same standard across the board, no matter who the producer is. As a performer, you should be promoting the show, get your show notes in on time, and you should get the MC notes in on time, and you should be writing your own bios and your own show notes, and not just say do what you think would work. You know who I am. You've seen me perform, so work your magic, MC or producer. Even though those are really good intentions, that does add time to the producer's list of things to do when they may not have time. Each producer, each MC, each stage kitten, all of the staff of all these shows are going to have their own way that they like to work, and some MCs do write them themselves every time by choice and just want to talk about what they've observed about that performer, and some of them would prefer to have your bio so that they can say it, especially if they have never met you. Showing up on time, these are the call times, you have to bring your own rigging if you have aerials, or you have to have your own insurance if you have aerials or fire involved. That way you have a two-way relationship and it's not all on the producer. Having all of that as clear as you can in the very beginning makes it so you have less questions leading up to the show, and especially if you do have questions leading up to the show, you can have more direct, concrete questions. Depending on if it's a local show that you're performing in or if you're traveling, is travel included? There is a huge difference between if you're applying to a show and if you are being reached out to by a producer and a producer says, hey, I've seen you perform, I would love to have you in my show. If a producer invites you to their show and you haven't applied to a show, they should be paying for all of your expenses, whether that's travel, if travel's involved. If you're staying in a hotel or accommodations, they should be setting up your accommodations, either paying for a hotel for you or finding a local performer that you can stay in town with. As a producer in the industry, it is our responsibility to take care of our performers, especially those that we reach out to and that we personally invite, because you are handpicked to be in the show. And just in general, whether or not there's a pandemic going on, you should also double check any restrictions that might be involved. Is there any restrictions with the venue? Like, are you not allowed to have mess, or are you not allowed to have glitter? Is smoke allowed? Or all of these different dynamics that might involve you or your act. Sometimes you have to wear masks. Anything to do with any venue restrictions or dynamics right now with policies and protocols, that's something that's also really helpful to know at the very beginning, so you can, again, prepare. It's going to be unique between venues and between producers, so it's always good to double check. And that's it. That is a general guideline. What to expect. How do you talk to a producer? What should you know at the very beginning when you're hired? Now, I've definitely missed some of these. I don't get all of these points every single time. And even with producers who I do work with all the time, I have to ask them quite a lot of questions regardless, even when I have all of these main points down. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. I would love to see, as performers or producers, what do you think are some things that people should know at the time of hire? With that, I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!